The river wasn't supposed to be that wild. It came down from the mountain swollen by unexpected rain, a brown, roaring serpent tearing through the canyon. And somewhere in that chaos, a lone rider spotted something pale struggling against the current, something human. Jake Carver had seen many things in his years drifting across the frontier, ambushes, fires, men dying under the desert sun, but nothing made his blood run cold like seeing that figure tossed in the foam, a flash of dark hair and bare arms, a woman being devoured by the river. He didn't think. He kicked his horse hard and rode down the embankment, the mud sliding beneath iron hooves. The roar of the water swallowed his shout. When he reached the edge, he swung off, tied the reins to a root, and dove in without a second thought. The cold hit like a hammer. The current spun him, dragged him under, but he fought up through it, eyes burning, arms slashing the surface. He caught sight of her again, her head dipping below, her hand weakly clawing at the air. He pushed forward, lungs screaming. When he reached her, she wasn't fighting anymore. Her body was limp, hair floating like dark riverweed. Jake grabbed her around the waist, turned her so her head stayed above water, and let the current carry them toward a fallen tree lodged against the rocks. He caught the trunk and hauled them both up, gasping, until they lay sprawled in the mud, half dead and shaking. She didn't move. Jake turned her over. Her face was young, 20, maybe, with high cheekbones and smooth bronze skin, a single braid coming loose against her neck. Her lips were blue. "Come on," he muttered, kneeling beside her. "Don't quit on me now." He pressed his ear to her mouth. Nothing. The silence was unbearable. He'd never done this before. He'd seen a doctor do something like it once, back east. Desperate, he tilted her head back and pressed his mouth to hers, breathing hard into her lungs, his hands on her chest, pushing, counting under his breath. Again. On the third try, she jolted, water bursting from her lips, a choking gasp tearing from her throat. She coughed violently, eyes flying open, wild and terrified. Jake caught her shoulders as she tried to scramble back. Easy, he said quickly. "You're safe, miss, you're safe." But she wasn't hearing him. Her eyes darted everywhere, at the river, the trees, him. She whispered something in Apache, the words shaking. Jake raised his hands slowly. "I ain't here to hurt you. You were drowning. I pulled you out. You're all right now." Her breathing was ragged, chest heaving. She blinked at him like she didn't believe what she was seeing, a strange man, soaked and shivering, kneeling over her in the mud. Then, as if realizing she wasn't in the spirit world, her eyes rolled back and she slumped against him. Jake caught her gently, muttering under his breath, "Well, hell." He carried her up from the riverbank to where his horse stood trembling, still tied to the root. She was light, lighter than he expected, but cold as stone. He wrapped his coat around her and laid her across the saddle. The nearest town was miles away, but he knew an old trapper's cabin nearby that could give them shelter. By the time he reached it, the rain had started again, soft and whispering through the pines. He pushed the door open, laid her carefully on a blanket near the fire pit, and started working to get the flame going. When the first light flickered to life, it caught her face again, peaceful now, but still pale. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. The kind of beauty that didn't belong to any man. He found himself whispering, "You just had to go drown in my part of the river, didn't you?" Hours passed before she stirred again. Jake was sitting near the door, cleaning his rifle when he heard her voice, soft, confused. "Where am I?" He looked up. "You're safe. Cabin near Red Ridge. You nearly didn't make it." Her eyes flickered toward him, wary but calm now. "You saved me. Yeah, pulled you out of that cursed river. You can thank me when you're not half dead." She blinked slowly, eyes tracing his face, as if memorizing every scar and shadow. "You shouldn't have touched me." He frowned. "Beg your pardon." She sat up a little, grimacing as pain lanced through her body. "You breathed into me. You put your hands on my chest." He blinked. "That's how I kept you alive, miss. You weren't breathing." Her expression softened, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. "You don't understand what that means," she whispered. "Among my people, that act, it binds life. You gave me breath. You share it now." Jake leaned forward, baffled. "What's that supposed to mean?" She turned her head toward the fire. "It means that what happens to me, will happen to you. You've tied our spirits." He chuckled quietly, shaking his head. "Lady, I've heard a lot of things out here in the wilds, but spirit binding ain't one of them." But she didn't smile. Her eyes glimmered in the firelight, not with fear, but something older, something solemn. You think this land is yours, white man. You think you can take from the river, the sky, the women who walk between. No, everything that lives here has a price. Her voice dropped lower. And you just paid it. Jake stared at her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the rain deepened into a steady whisper, and the wind moaned through the pines. Finally, he exhaled, rubbing his temple. All right, you can believe whatever you want. But for now, you need rest. You nearly drowned. You'll stay here tonight. She didn't argue, just closed her eyes again, her body trembling under the coat. He sat watching her for a while, wondering what the hell she meant, why her words lingered in his mind. He'd saved people before, soldiers, strangers, a lost boy once, but never had someone told him he'd tied his soul to theirs. As the fire burned low, Jake's eyelids grew heavy. He leaned back against the wall and drifted into uneasy sleep. He dreamed of water, endless and dark, and of a woman's voice calling his name through the waves. When he woke, the fire was nearly out. The first pale light of dawn crept through the cracks in the walls. He turned to check on her, and froze. She wasn't there. The blanket was empty, the door slightly open, cold air sliding in. He stepped outside quickly, scanning the forest. For a heartbeat, he saw nothing, then caught sight of her standing barefoot at the riverbank, staring into the mist. He called softly, "Hey, you shouldn't be up yet." She didn't turn. Her voice drifted back, barely above a whisper. "I can feel your heart beating, Jake Carver." He stopped dead. "What did you say?" She looked over her shoulder then, eyes dark and knowing. "You gave me your breath. Now we share the same heart." He felt it before he could argue, a strange, heavy pulse deep in his chest, as if his heartbeat had doubled, echoing faintly in time with hers. For the first time in years, the cowboy who feared nothing felt something close to terror. Ache couldn't shake the feeling. The air around him felt heavier somehow, every breath slower, like his chest fought against something unseen. He tried to shrug it off. The chill from the river, the sleepless night, but when he looked toward the woman standing at the water's edge, her lips moving silently as if in prayer, a strange ache pulsed through him again, sharp and real. He walked toward her, boots crunching on wet earth. "You shouldn't be out here," he said softly. "You barely made it through the night." She turned her head, eyes reflecting the early light like polished amber. "The river called me," she murmured. "It wants to take back what it lost." He frowned, uneasy. "You're talking like the river's alive." She looked back at him, the faintest smile curling her lips. "It is. Everything here listens. Even you." He shook his head, rubbing his jaw. "Look, I don't pretend to understand your people's ways. But if you're feeling grateful for me pulling you out, that's thanks enough. You can rest here until you're strong enough to travel." "I can't leave," she said simply. "Why the hell not?" Her gaze lifted to his chest, and he swore he saw something flicker in her eyes, fear, pity, maybe both. "Because you won't let me." He blinked. "What? You tied us, remember?" She whispered. "When you breathed life into me. You may not believe it, but the river does. Our lives are one now. If I leave, the bond pulls tight. It will hurt you first." Jake let out a rough laugh, though it came out hollow. "Lady, I've heard plenty of tall tales sitting around campfires, but this one takes the prize." But she didn't smile. Her eyes didn't waver. "You already feel it, don't you? When I breathe, your chest moves. When my blood stirs, your heart answers." He opened his mouth to argue, but froze. The moment she said it, he realized he'd been breathing in rhythm with her. Every slow inhale, every pause, matched perfectly. And the dull ache in his chest, the strange heaviness, flared the instant she looked away. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. She tilted her head, almost sad. "Now you understand." He rubbed the back of his neck. "So what? We're bound by magic, spirits. You expect me to believe that?" "It's not magic," she said quietly. "It's the oldest law. Life returned cannot belong to one alone." For a long moment, they just stood there, wind moving softly through the trees. Somewhere far off, a hawk cried. Finally, Jake sighed and turned back toward the cabin. "All right, suppose you're right. Suppose we're bound. What happens now?" She followed him, silent as a shadow. "Now," she said finally, "we learn what it means." He stirred the dying fire back to life, poured her a tin cup of warm water, and watched her carefully. She drank slowly, her hands trembling slightly. "What's your name?" he asked. "Taya," she said. "It means wind that carries voice." "Fitting," he muttered. "You sure carry plenty of that." For the first time, she almost smiled. And you, Cowboy, Jake Carver, rancher, drifter, depends on the day. She nodded as if weighing the name. Carver, a man who cuts paths. That's so, maybe the spirits sent you to carve a new one for me. He snorted softly. Lady, I don't think spirits know what to do with me. But as the day went on, Jake began to notice more of the strangeness she'd warned about. When she winced from a cut on her arm, he felt a faint sting in his own. When she gasped from a sudden chill, a shiver raced down his spine at the exact same moment. He told himself it was coincidence. Just nerves. But when night came, and he tried to sleep, he dreamed again, the river, the rush of cold water, and Taya's face beneath the surface, eyes open, reaching for him. He woke sweating, heart pounding, and found her sitting beside the fire, awake, staring into the flames. You saw it, she whispered. He froze. Saw what? The river, she said. It calls us both now. He swallowed hard, sitting up. You mean, you saw it too? She nodded. I felt you thrashing. I felt your fear. I saw through your eyes. He stared at her, silent for a long time. That's impossible. No, she said softly. It's the bond. The river tied our spirits, and now, it shows us what the other feels. Jake leaned forward, elbows on his knees, shaking his head. I ain't never been tied to anyone. Not by the law, not by blood, not by choice. And I sure as hell didn't ask for this. Taya's voice was calm but unyielding. Neither did I. The silence between them stretched long and taut. The fire popped once, throwing sparks into the air. Finally, she said, if the bond was made, it can't be broken by words. But maybe by truth. What kind of truth? The kind that brought you here, she said. You run from something, Jake Carver. Every man who rides alone does. Tell me what river you crossed before this one. He looked at her sharply. Lady, you don't know a damn thing about me. She met his glare without flinching. I don't have to. The bond tells me enough. Your heart carries loss, the same weight as mine. Jake turned away, staring into the dark beyond the door. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon hung low and silver over the pines. He didn't want to tell her. Didn't want to remember. But the words came anyway, low and rough. My wife. 2 winters ago. Fever took her before spring. I buried her myself. After that, I just kept riding. Taya didn't speak for a moment. When she finally did, her voice was barely a whisper. Then maybe the river didn't take from you. Maybe it gave you back what you lost. He turned slowly, meeting her eyes. And what's that supposed to mean? She looked back at him with a calm that made his stomach twist. A second chance to love something that can still break you. The fire crackled between them, casting gold light across her face. And though he wanted to laugh, wanted to deny everything she'd said, the pounding in his chest told him the truth was already there, and it was her heartbeat echoing inside him. Outside, the river flowed on, restless, whispering through the night.